This is Amy Eskridge, and she passed away in 2022 under mysterious circumstances. She was an aerospace engineer tied to NASA, focused on advanced propulsion, anti-gravity concept, and non-traditional physics. She even built her own research company because she said that when she was working for other people, they wouldn't allow her to make discoveries. Not even joking. She spoke openly about her work, about there being interferences, about being a targeted person, that people were out to get her, and that she had even received death threats if she went public. Then, in 2022, the news came out. According to the articles that came out at that time, her death was reported as a suicide. Now, she had spent years saying that if anything ever happened to her, it was not going to be by her hands. Multiple times. Other people had also warned her that if you talk about anti-gravity propulsion and things like that and extraterrestrials, you could get offed. Now, reports say that she died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. That's what was officially released to the public. But that's also what got my attention. Because now, in 2026, my friend David Wilcock ended up passing away in the exact same manner, but with a slight difference. I believe the two situations are connected. Let me explain why. David's passing seems identical to hers, except he made a 911 call asking for help. If someone is suicidal, why would they call 911 for help? And he was whispering as if he was trying not to be heard by whoever was allegedly chasing him, right? So during the call, he let slip that he was hiding from people, that they wanted to get him, but he couldn't explain who exactly was trying to get him. You can actually hear him in the 911 call say, them, he didn't know how to explain it. And he mentioned something about shadow figures. Now, when I remote viewed the situation, there were no shadow figures, but in the trees, I heard movements of like invisible people. I don't understand, but I could feel that he knew what was going to happen to him, that someone was trying to take over his body. That's why he couldn't allow it, and that's the only thing that would explain what he did next. So, identical to Amy, gunshot, and he takes his own life. And this is why I believe it's connected to Amy and her research. Let me tell you why. It all brings me to believe, are these the famous P47 time travelers that Amy Eskridge was talking about? And if you're not familiar with her work, I'm going to tell you the story. Amy had some classified information about a project called P47 and P52, is it? Anyway, so where I believe it connects is this P47 program. Keep this in mind. P47, allegedly, based on what Amy says, means the present plus 47,000 years in the future. This was part of what her research was connected to, and this is why it also matters, because it deals with the idea that time is not fixed and that the future outcomes can be accessed or interfered with. And we've seen this multiple times in TV shows like Travelers, Timeless, and at that point just brings me to believe they're telling us without telling us, a little bit like the Stargate movie, right? They're always based on true things. They also believe that if they tell you something, they won't get karmic consequences for what they're doing. It's their belief system, and how it works is that if I tell you that I'm going to do this, even through movies or something like that, you accept it. You accept it as a reality, you manifest it, you accept it, so they're not going to get karmic consequences. Now, this is their belief. Doesn't mean it's true, but let's move on. So in the future, there is a nuclear escalation and between China and USA. China strikes the United States. Not sure if United States strikes back, but what happens is it turns into this chain reaction where cities are wiped out, the atmosphere is damaged, oxygen drops, water is contaminated, food supplies collapse, there's no food, and fertility drops to almost nothing. This is when humanity splits into 3 factions. One part goes in these underground bunkers, and here we start to understand why all of these elites and billionaires and millionaires are building these bunkers. What if they know what's going to happen? Because they are... hold on. Don't let me get too ahead of themselves. All right. So one part goes in bunkers. Another part goes into these space stations that right now are allegedly cloaked but already exist. They're basically these off-world habitats. What's that show called? The 100? Think of that. In that TV show, it's also a scenario like this. Then there's this third part of humanity. Get this. These are the surface survivors who adapt over thousands of years. But those surface survivors, they change. And this is where the gray aliens come in. They're not aliens at all. They are basically, based on this story, future humans. And it also connects to those weird videos from the time period of Area 51, where there are these P47 looking beings that Linda Moulton Howe calls the Ebens. Here they're called P47s. Now, I believe that P47 stands for going back in time to when the 47th president was in power. And that would be Trump, would coincide, would make sense. This is where I'm going to connect this to Primal Dad's video talking about the missing scientists in China also. Would make sense if it's connected to this. So the Greys are future humans from the surface. They're the surface survivors. The bunker population and the space station population, they do not turn into the Greys, only the survivors on the surface. Because the bunker groups, they are protected. They have controlled environments, they have stable air, filtered water, managed genetics, trying to preserve what humans already are. On the other hand, we have the space groups that are also controlled, artificial habitats, and they have long-term survival systems, again, focused on preservation. But the people on the surface, they are all exposed to all of these calamities. Radiation, toxic air, contaminated water, food scarcity, and generation over generation adapting under this stress. This is apparently where the physical change happens over thousands of years. So the surface population becomes something else, while the bunker and space populations stay closer to baseline human. And since their timeline is totally messed up, and it's basically impossible to continue to survive, what do? They figure out a way to come back in time. Now you're going to start connecting this to all of the alleged abductions that the gray aliens did, getting genetic materials. This makes sense, right? But this is the thing. They can't send bodies back in time. It's too complicated. The wormholes are unstable, it's too expensive, and it's also too dangerous. The process itself would destroy a physical body. So what do? They decided to send consciousness. No body, just awareness. But when it gets here, it needs a body. So it takes one. It takes a host, a sleeve. And they don't pick random people. Neither would I. They go into people with power, people that have money, that have access, that have influence. Now, the ones that are coming back, there are some that are all just coming back to save themselves. They have no interest in trying to save their future timeline. They're just coming back and saying, I'm going to live out the rest of my days now. And this allows them to escape that future. And this is when it would make sense that they go into celebrities, wealthy people. They come back to secure resources and also control. Now others, there are different factions. Now others are coming back to change a little outcome of the timelines. They're like, we can save our timeline if we just change things that happened that triggered all of these events, which would be China nuking America. So these guys, they come back to interfere, to remove people, to remove scientists, the ones in China that maybe helped create things that then brought to that. You see where I'm going with this? Basically, anyone connected to events that led to that future, they're going to take out. They're not going to risk it. Because it's not like in certain movies where they can see what happens in the future. They're stuck here. And I believe that this is where these disappearances are coming in. This is where the people being taken out comes in. And I believe that this is simply an explanation to why all of these scientists around the world are going missing and why it's all happening all around the same time now. This is the moment. This is the moment that everything starts. And it also connects to Revelation, the end times. So all of these scientists in China that are making drones and weapons and things like that, they're all disappearing. This would explain why. Because if China does this strike, it would be normal that the factions coming back in time to fix it will be taking out who maybe created it. And remember, there isn't just one group. There are factions, different groups from that future, different agendas. Some trying to stop the destruction, some trying to control it, some just trying to survive, and some they came here to be greedy and control our timeline. So these are all people fighting over the timeline. And when you put all of this information next to Amy Eskridge, advanced propulsion, anti-gravity, targeted, passed away in 22 under mysterious circumstances, she was exposing all of this already back in 2022. Her official report of death is suicide, and so is David Wilcock. He was also spreading advanced concept, and he was also involved in anti-gravity propulsion. He's also gone. And that is where I'm making this connection. It would explain all of the odd behavior that we're seeing in powerful people in the past year. They start off one way, and then they completely change. Their ideologies and agendas are radically changed, almost as if they were replaced by another what? Consciousness? And what about all the actors and actors that are starting to look like starvation mode, the famine look, I call it, with the bug eyes and the big foreheads? What if those are the people from the surface and they're just not used to eating, and so they start morphing into what they used to look like? I mean, the possibilities are endless here. And then I also find it odd that David Wilcock goes live on YouTube, talks about Trump and the famous Jesus AI photo, and then this happens to him. How many people that are influential get cut down just after this coincidence? He must have said something to trigger the timeline or to make himself noticed in some way by these time travelers. And I wouldn't put it past it that that's the same thing that happened to Amy Eskridge. What if she did something after 2022 that contributed? See where I'm going with that? As usual, let me know what you think in the comments. Are the scientists around the world and all of these important people that are connected to UFO and disclosure going missing or passing away by mysterious circumstances because it's the P47 time travelers doing it?